All right. Hello, hello, hello. For anybody that's awake at this point. All right. Let's see. This doesn't have the thing up. There we go. Okay, so I've copied that out already. Let's drop this. And I need to get the right terminal over here. Probably don't want this up, but we'll create yet another desktop for it. That'll work. Do I have? Yes, I do. Pull our terminal over here. One I already have open. So right now, the game, if we run it, why is that happening? That's so weird. Computers had quite a bit of uptime at this point, had a lot of monitors connected and reconnected. So we're ending up with some weird window behavior. I also just dragged this window over from the other side. So this is the game currently. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Can pick things up, drag them to the final area, whatever. There's some issues with these with these rotating platforms. And this is what kick-started us off on the Blender add-on over the last month. So you end up on this and it doesn't move, so you got to like run along with it, which is not really what you want. You want those to have, like effects on the player and whatnot. So the reason we started with the Blender add-on is that we've got quite a few files in here and whatnot. And this file in particular is not great to deal with. So we end up with this like Beam extras like type or whatever, and some other types in here. And the whole point of this is basically to take these things from Blender. So I think I should be able to just regularly open Blender at this point. And then this will be misc GLTF. Let's do a backup here before we do anything today. I think we have the GLTF here, which is just an export of the GLB. Let's get rid of this other PNG stuff. Really, the only thing we have in here is this misc.glb, which I will make a backup of now. I guess we should back up the blend file really, but that's an art. So we've got misc blend 1, and I will make that misc 1 backup pre-scheme, we'll call it. So we've got this like type that just keeps growing. And the way that this is currently working, I think we have that logic in level spawn, maybe. On spawn player, spawn level. Lib. On level spawn. We broke it out into its own. So we've got this observer for on level spawn. And on level spawn triggers on scene instance ready, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Sorry, it's been it's been a couple weeks. Scene instance ready, and then we basically get queries for all of the like extras. So GLTF extras, GLTF mesh extras, etc., stuff like that. those are all the things that come in via custom properties in Blender. So if I open the blend file here, which I think should be in recent, yeah. Allow execution. So the way we've been doing things, let me make this a little bigger so people can see it. Interface, I don't know, 1.45. So if we scroll all the way down, we're selected on this like cube here, which happens to be a platform. We've got custom properties in Blender. We are manually writing those in here. So we've got collider, cube size, platform behavior, rigid body, etc. Platform behavior is custom. Rigid body comes from Avian. And then collider is just kind of like a thing that we have that then instantiates cuboid colliders and whatnot. And this is fine, like it works. I could see just keeping going with this over and over. But doing this kind of serialization from custom properties through the extras into this like massive type that we have over here really isn't the way that I want to maintain my code base. So the more levels we build, the more functionality for different platforms and things, the more of this kind of stuff keeps getting like applied. So what I want to do today is basically get rid of this because we've got this other plugin that we've now built, which is actually installed here. So it's this Scheme Bevy panel here. And that will fetch all the types for this and allow us to start actually replacing some of this code. So let's make sure that we have everything that we ever had committed. Pre-scheme. And then I think, is this Rust toolchain going to a nightly? It is. I think that's okay for now. I bumped to 2024 in this project before 2024 came out. So we are good. So the thing that I'm going to do is cargo add Bevy scheme. And then I think we still have our application plugins being added in main. We've got the remote plugin added here. I'm going to remove those because those get added by Scheme. So I'm going to replace this with Scheme plugin default. And this probably needs to get imported. This looks like it's not well formatted here. I wonder what happened there. I've noticed that Rust Analyzer is a little bit slow lately. I think there's something that they're fixing. ISPerf UI got a release actually, so we could upgrade to that too. Maybe we want to upgrade Avian to 2.1. I don't think there's any breaking changes. But we've got Bevy Scheme 0.1.1, which is a 0.15 compatible version of the Blender add-on. Which is something that I did this week. So up until our last stream, it was only 0.16. Now there is actually like a 0.15 and a 0.15 release, which is cool. I haven't told anybody about it, so not expecting anybody to use it, but I wanted to install it into this project rather than pulling it from the Git repo or anything. So this is installed now. We aren't running it, so let's run it. Patch GLTF was not used in Crategraph. Okay, let's get rid of that. I remember we were looking into that. Let's get rid of the GLTF fork entirely and make sure that it doesn't exist anymore. Because we don't need to do that. So we should be able to run this, which should recompile some stuff because of, I think, Bevy Scheme's dependencies and whatnot. I haven't looked at the crate dependency graph or anything yet, so we could definitely split things up a little bit here. Yeah. So we do need the application to actually run. And what's going to happen here, hopefully, because I haven't tested this on this project, hopefully what's going to happen is this will expose the BRP endpoints through the Scheme plugin. We'll be able to get those endpoints through Blender, and we'll be able to start adding components inside of Blender. We haven't been very good about reflecting our component data, so we'll probably have to make some changes there. This Blender types stuff, we'll have to go through this and start deleting some of this code little by little. So like this hold point, I believe just translates directly into a component in on level spawn. Hold point, yeah. So it just inserts the hold point component, which is over here. So we have component and reflect on that. So this should show up actually. So we should remove some of the custom property data and start using hold point in Blender as the first thing that we do. Oh, we had upgrades for everything. Interesting. Okay, so that's why we're recompiling. We went from 0.15.1 to 0.15.3. So all of the Bevy crates upgraded and stuff like that. I bet that was forced by the Scheme dependencies, which is my fault. Because I defined what those are. And I don't think I have any... I don't really have any of the build stuff set up for faster builds or anything. So hold point gets added to some entity that has a hold point on it. This code should never run. So we'll add a log here so that we know that this is running. I don't want to panic because we still have that data in the GLTF. But the hold point, if I remember correctly, is on this box. So this is running. And it's worth noting that we do already currently have a warning no hold point in interactable entity tree. I think that's related to just the idea that the system is running before that gets instantiated. I don't know where exactly we have that log. Bizarre window behavior today. No hold point in main. This is for when we're picking stuff up. So this is the raycast, and then that happens. So we'll be able to clean some of this stuff up too, because I think we won't have to iterate through the tree and whatnot, but we'll get back to cleaning some of this up. So let's get rid of this for the moment. Hey, hope you're excellent today. Thanks for all the things you've been sharing. I'm glad you're enjoying them. Hope you're also doing excellent today. Hopefully this plugin will be shareable after the stream today. I mean, technically it's... What is going on with that window? Okay, so we've got the application running is really all we need. So if we go over here into Blender, This is the current blend file. We've got hold point on the crate collection, I feel like. Where's the crate collection? Crate collection is on library, crate root, cuboid, color reveal, cube size, respawn, rigid body, target. What is target? I didn't name that well. Hold point. Cool. So I think we can get rid of debug and we can get rid of hold point here. Let's make sure that the hold point actually ran. Add in custom property. Hold point is the last thing that shows up here. So let's do fetch of the Bevy type registry. And hold, oh, you know what? Actually, I messed up. Let's get out of this for a second. I was debugging some avian stuff and I added a hard-coded restriction. I hope I didn't publish that now that I think about it. No, this is Python. Okay, it didn't get published. Yeah, I added a hard-coded, this uses only avian types because I was debugging some avian thing. So that's fine. Yada, yada, yada. So we didn't save anything. Let's go back to lib. Go back to the hold point, I guess. We'll go to fetch the type registry again. So hold point shouldn't have been filtered out now. It should show up. If it doesn't, there's something wrong. So the question is what? Hold point is a marker component. So the one thing I can do here is go to text, go to skein, copy this out. Let's just do it over here. Language, JSON, I guess. Format. Then we need to find hold point here, make sure that it's actually in the types, which it doesn't look like it actually is. Seeing a lot of avian stuff. If it's not in the registry, then we can't generate it. And unfortunately, if it's not in the registry and we can't generate it, then we can't give a warning about it either. So this file is really unfortunately long. What did we call the crate? The crate is called Bevy 15 Game, right? Yeah, very original. Bevy 15 doesn't look like there's any. Doesn't look like there's any components from that crate, which is interesting. Oh, here's a question. Do I still have this other one running? So the other thing that you don't find out about is actually if you have multiple Bevy apps running and they all have BRP enabled, they won't collide and you won't know. And fetch uses BRP? Yes, fetch Bevy type registry here uses BRP. So let's run this, try to take ownership of that endpoint. And then fetch. This is a Blender operator that you can see in the repo. The Blender operator just calls BRP and parses it basically. So now we have Bevy 15 hold point here. We insert that and it's a marker component. So now it's just there. It's on this hold point. It is always on this hold point. We could duplicate this hold point in a bunch of different places and it would come with it. So let's get rid of this data. And let's save and export GLTF. We're going to do the GLTF binary here. I think I just need to find the right assets folder. I've done so many tests and they're all named assets in every project. Okay, so let's go to this one. Let's click into it. And then I put it in here, I think. Yeah. Let's export. Hopefully nothing broke. See a lot of output down there. I guess that's just because there's a lot of stuff happening. Interesting to see all of the like not Skeen related logs. There's a lot of rig related stuff. This is Skeen stuff. So the question here then is, if we look at this GLB, let's import from GLB. We'll grab this. We'll import. We'll do extracted misc1, just so that we have a place that is fairly clean that we can just delete the entire folder rather than picking and choosing stuff. And in here we should have hold point. Yeah, so hold point. Actually, I need to delete Skeen 2 from the export. Now that I look at this, Skeen 2 was a thing that I had one approach where we had the active form on the window manager, and then I switched to a different approach. And while I was doing that, I did it incrementally as a second key. So I just need to reconcile that key back in because this isn't used at all. This is used. But this is like extra junk data that we should definitely get rid of. Oh, you know what? The reason I didn't see that before, actually, is because this project has custom properties on the export enabled, and the other one doesn't. So that's something worth noting. But now we have this component here in the Bevy reflected format. So in on level spawn, right, this should no longer run, first of all. Our program should not crash or anything like that. It has the component on it, I guess. Did I mess something up? I feel like my character is messed up. We don't have that log happening, right? So this code is not running for sure. So let's run. This is integrating the add-on into an active project, so it's going to look a little weird. I did something to the character, apparently. I guess I had something enabled, or I don't know. I did something to the character. Anyway, character is not what we're currently dealing with. Level, children, create collection, create root, create root has children, hold point, and then hold point has the hold point component. So we have the component here, and we can get rid of our code. So this is, I don't want to say it's going well, but I don't know what I did there. So let's get rid of the extracted folder. We know this is working other than the fact that I like rotated the player at some point. Character blob, I think, is the right character. No, it's not character blob. It is first character. I don't remember rotating this, but it looks like it is in fact rotated. See the character, sphere, eyes have rotation, hold has rotation, character does not. And then hold is like the name of that, but we can actually have a component there now. I'm not going to worry about the player for the moment, I think. I'm going to keep working with everything else until we whittle down crate roots. So we've got these to deal with. I think rigid body is already in here. Yeah, rigid body is something we can add. And in this case, it's dynamic, so we'll leave it at dynamic. I'll get rid of that. I don't know what target is. Do we have target in here somewhere? It is. Okay. I added a thing that I didn't document at all. Great. Wonderful. I should have written documentation for this one. This is like the most generic component name ever. Oh, goal target stuff? Okay. In any case, we now have component for avian. Let's make this bigger. The display here is not particularly great. I don't know what I'm going to do about the UI UX stuff. But when you have a top level enum, maybe we name it the short name or something. I don't know. We'll find out. That's all later stuff. So out of bounds behavior respawn. Do we have an out of bounds behavior for the crate root is what we're on right now? Right, this is a component. I think this is just like a component straight up. So I think we can just add this. Let's do out of bounds behavior. Out of bounds behavior doesn't seem like it's available. Well, we probably didn't register it is what happened. This is the other thing. Like once you start working with this stuff, this does not reflect. And this does not have reflect on it for the component data. And thus it's probably also not being registered in whatever plugin we have in this file, right? Hold point was registered. So we were doing our good Bevy due diligence earlier, and then we got lazy. So this is going to happen for a couple of these things too. That's out of bounds behavior. I guess original transform can now be set in Blender, which is really cool. So we were doing some like workarounds to set that. Out of bounds marker sounds like something that should be a reflect. Basically, everything that's a component should actually be reflected and registered. There's no real reason for most of these things to not be, other than just having been lazy at some point. So player is going to be here, goal is going to be here, or any other components in this file. Holding, anything that holds an entity right now, entity is a value we don't handle, so I'm not going to include that. Component on original transform. I feel like original transform we should do later. Let's do some of the easier stuff first. And then let's look for anything else that's in here. Oop, that is not great. That looks like a registry file. I feel like this shouldn't be written out currently. RG component. So GLTF extras debug, GLTF extras debug. This is just an example. The other thing that's really cool is going to be this Uber material. Not in the examples. Materials, Uber. We're going to be able to apply this in Blender, which will be very cool. Get a little bit more control over where this is actually placed. Right now, we're just applying it on everything. So color reveal is reflected. That's all that's in here. Let's look for lib. I'm just going through and reflecting everything that... We also have to make sure they're registered too, actually, now that I think about it. So let's make sure goal and player are both registered up here. And this is the way that we get it into Blender in the first place. If it's registered here, then it'll come through BRP. So out of bounds marker, out of bounds behavior. I think target was one that we didn't have registered. Don't think we're going to do original transform yet. I think auto registration is something that somebody was working on, but I don't remember. Okay, so here we have components, platform, reflect on platform, reflect component. So now we'll be able to label our platforms in Blender. Platform animation offset, probably also useful. I don't think we're using rotate or rotation type. But that's fine. Processed, probably not something, because that's code related. So we probably don't want to put processed on anything in Blender, so we won't reflect it. Timers we can't do. So that leaves us with platform, offset, rotate. I think we aren't using rotation or rotation type. So maybe we'll leave those out. And then what other files do we have? Post process. Interesting idea, but no. Blender types might have a component. Section texture definitely has components. I don't know if we want to place them in Blender though. And then camera has components that we probably don't want to deal with. Okay, so I think we're good on the reflected component front. So we'll run the app again to serve up BRP. Nothing should break except for that random rotated. I will refetch the registry because we want the new components. And it's really funny because the processing of the registry and the request actually doesn't take that long. It takes like maybe hundreds of milliseconds. But opening an internal text file in Blender seems to take like multiple seconds, which is wild. Maybe I'm doing something incredibly wrong, but that slowdown is not from the request or the processing. It's from opening a single text file, which is kind of wild. So out of bounds behavior. And respawn is what we want. So we will have respawn. And we'll get rid of this. Target. I don't know what target is doing currently, but we do want it. So let's put it in. The color reveal is also here. We'll insert that. That can default to red. That's fine. So we're just eating away at these. Right now, the only thing that I know doesn't work, because it's very complicated, is the avian collider constructor. So a little bit more work needs to happen for that. That's why I'm leaving the collision stuff here for the moment. So rigid body, out of bounds behavior, target, color reveal. So this cube, if we export, should still work. And it does. And our player is now facing the right direction for some reason. So maybe that's ooh. Out of bounds behavior respawn with no original transform can't respawn. Okay, so this is really interesting. I think for 0.16, entities are going to be able to, like, you're going to be able to clone an entity and disable it, which I think is what we want to do in this situation. But for 0.15, we still have to do this logic. And that logic is like this. So this logic is no longer running because we're now inserting the respawn component from like directly instead of what it's currently doing. So the question here becomes, how do we want to handle this original transform? And I think I have an idea for that. The question is, if we do a transform here, not Bevy transform interpolation, Bevy, what is this? Bevy transform? Yeah, there we go. So we do have transform here and we can insert it. I think all of this is fine. And then I think I want to drive this from the actual position of the cube. But I think I would have to do that on the instance, not on this. So let's check the scene for a second, if I can get back to... Was it level 1? No. Level 2? Level 2. So we've got this crate collection now. And we basically instanced it and placed it in the scene, right? So the question in my mind is, we can use drivers here, but can we drive the value of the instance component from here? And I don't know the answer to that. Let's find out. Blender, drive. Drive value of instance. Drive value of instance, maybe. I'm not super familiar with the drivers functionality, but I did implement support for them. And you can do anything in here. So arbitrary Python, which is interesting. We don't need arbitrary Python. We just need like the parent's global position. I guess the question I have is, what were we doing with the previous? Because out of bounds behavior respawn, we're inserting global transforms position on this entity. This entity is just the entity that has the extras on it, which means it is the inner cube itself in this case. And this is a collection that disappears, I think, in the GLTF. Let's find out. Let's look at the expanded version of this. Okay, so we've got expanded. Let's do... I don't think we have it. I think that this... Oh, crate collection 2. Okay. Let's do crate collection 2. Okay, so crate collection 2 does exist. And crate collection 2 has child 25. Child 25 is going to be... I want to say this. So you can see all the component data coming through in here. This is the one that we want, actually. The one up here is just like the raw data as it exists in Blender. We actually need to remove this, I think, when we export. It is interesting to have in general. I feel like we could maybe make this a option in the scheme preferences. We could say, hey, do you want the raw Blender data to be exported alongside? Maybe that's useful for debugging, but we'll see. So Skein has all of our data, right? Marker component here, enum components here. This is what the out of bounds behavior is on. I think that, what do I think? Can we link something to something lower down in the hierarchy? Can I put this on the instance maybe? This is where we get to some of the usability stuff that I haven't really tested yet. So this is an instance, right? If we put some random component, let's try sensor. This is on the object, I think. No, this is on the collection. So this goes on create collection. We can't put anything on the instance. Interesting thought process here. Because if we put it on, I guess this isn't a collection. What is this? Double box icon. Xavier would be able to tell me what this is. What is the double box icon? Nope. Nope. Is that orange collection? Orange. Yeah. Okay. What is the orange collection on? It's a collection instance. You can't directly edit a collection instance. You need to find the original collection. Okay, so this is a collection instance. Which means that create collection 002 is an instance and create collection 002 gets a name with extras and everything, so it exists in the hierarchy, right? Create cargo run. This is one of the things that I'm going to end up having to do for people as well. I realized as I was making this, if other people start to use this, I'm basically going to have to learn a lot more about Blender. Okay, so observer entity level, children, goal barrier. This is create collection too. And create collection 2 is not what gets removed. So create collection 2 just kind of like stays here. Which I guess is fine. It's just the way we implemented it. We could implement it a different way. Because this crate here is down here now, crate root. So really what I want to do is take this translation and have it drive the value of the instance's custom property, which I feel like should be doable. That doesn't feel particularly, I guess, usable would be the word. Drive Blender value on collection instance. Like quite a bit of complicated stuff you can do in here. I'm looking for something a little bit easier. When I parent the collection instance to an object and then link the collection instance as a child. Maybe I need to learn a little bit more about Blender drivers. This is the basics. This already works. View layer attribute lookup. Okay, so the material attribute node in the view layer searches for the attribute property in multiple locations. This, for example, can allow setting the certain value of a custom attribute at the scene or world level, and then overriding it differently for one view layer. Okay, so maybe there's some kind of like cascading thing we can take advantage of here. Feels weird for what we're doing, but maybe. For an attribute named adder, the node tries the following 6 path lookups: adder in the view layer, custom property; adder in the active view layer, built-in; adder in the active scene. It's hilarious that it looks for the square bracket syntax and then the dot syntax. Okay, so that only looks through scenes. But there is some kind of fallback behavior, which is interesting. So we could fall back to like 0, 0, 0, right? And if we don't find it, I wonder if there's a way to like look for the instance of this. Let's see, workflow and examples, drivers. This is only for export too, so it's not like we need continuous values. 0, 1 or more variables, function or expression. Don't really want like interesting that you can script all that stuff though. Because then you can script things and send values into components. After add-in drivers, they're usually modified in the drivers editor. Okay. Drivers panel is this. All right, well, let's see if we can figure that out. Maybe we go to lib. And maybe we add, I need something that I can target. Maybe we target transform for the moment. This is just for testing purposes, basically. So we add a driver here. And this is a script expression, average, sum, min, max, driver value. Single property or transform channel. Transform channel. This can select a specific object. I don't want a specific object. Is there like instance here? Is there... Blender driver, use instance value. Multiple variables, custom properties. I wonder if I just select the instance, if it'll give me the like magic word for use the instance. So it looks like geometry nodes stuff. No answers to this one. Can make an instance real, but that isn't really what I want to do. Is there a drivers thing here? So this is called var. Distance, single property, transform channel. I want the X world space position of the instance. So like this would work. Right, because we could add a driver here. That's not what I want. Edit driver, object. Right, create collection 2. Y location. Add driver. Create collection 2 Z location. So we can tie all of the values for this component for the transform to the things in Blender and do any kind of math on them we want or anything. And this exports correctly. So let's just make sure that that exports. GLTF. Let's do direct to GLTF and do it over here. So do I have the right file open? Expanded, GLTF. So we end up with that information here. This is for create root. I think that's a problem in general from, how do I say this? From the like export, from like the idea of an export, right? Here's another create root. So we've got create root here. And we've got create root here, which are two instances of the create root. So we have duplicated it. Wait. 8, 10, 12, 14, 15, 16, 18, 19. All of these are named create root. Do we have like 7 create roots in here? Interesting. So they do get duplicated. Right? And right now they all have the same value because we tied it to the create root specifically. Interesting. So theoretically, there's a way to get these to be individual because that's how they export. I guess open drivers editor. There's no like instance thing here or whatever. Node tree? No. Curve palette. Okay, so this is going to be something that I'm going to want to figure out. I wonder if there's some kind of special name here that we can use. Or if we can use the instance as a driver for the underlying property. Maybe that's the right way to go about it. If we go to level 2 and we say no, because we need to have a value to drive, and I don't think we can do that from here. So I think there's a way to do this. It seems pretty close, but I'm not sure. So simple, like tracking of that would be fine, but the instance tracking of that seems a little bit harder to deal with. Okay, good to know. So for the moment then, I won't do that. I will leave myself a note somewhere. And Skeen, maybe? Here's the Skeen stuff. So let's see. Drive component values for instanced objects. I feel like this should be possible. I don't know that for sure. But this is a Blender thing, not a plugin thing. The other thing that's really interesting is that we could potentially use those links for relationships. That would be really interesting as well. But I haven't gotten into investigating relationships like that yet. Okay, so collider, cube size. Collider is the only thing that isn't currently working. We have everything else handled for the crate. And then I guess like these other things, whatever they are, if they have any data, we would need to do them too. I don't think they do. This can get a rigid body static. Get rid of that. You just took a look at the driver functions example template under the scripting workspace. It kind of looks like what you might be looking for. Okay, interesting. I'll take a look. Thanks for looking at that. Hey, Lo, how's it going? We are putting the Blender plugin into the actual game now. Trying to debug some use cases. So you're saying templates, Python. Yep. Templates. Well, let me make sure that I'm not overriding the registry. So if you ever need to actually look for registry stuff, it is here in skeenregistry.json. Maybe I want to format this. But yeah, anyway, it's there for anybody that wants to look at it and whatnot. This also makes it easier to share Blender files. Because if you don't change the schema, then you don't need the application running, and all the data is embedded in the Blender file. Okay, so you were saying drivers somewhere in here, right? Which apparently I can't click on. Driver functions. A script defines functions to be used directly in driver expressions, extend the built-in set of Python functions. Oh, we can supply our own, like as a library. That's cool. This only receives value factor and UUID. Which is interesting. Driver namespace, invert, slow value. Okay, so potentially, I feel like that's something that we shouldn't need to script ourselves. I feel like that's something that should exist, but better than nothing. Okay, so then that's that. Let's go back to the level. This should have goal on it. Do we have goal? We do have goal. Insert. Remove. Platform needs a rigid body. Static. Get rid of this. Another rigid body. Static. Get rid of this. Spawn point. Do we have a spawn point? No, we should make a spawn point component. I don't think we have one currently. Let's export some of this. Up a level. GLB, export. Run the game. Pick stuff up, get it through. So components for rigid bodies and stuff are all applied to the platforms and whatnot. At least for that first level. We didn't do the other level yet. So here is basically these are all going to be rigid body static over and over, right? Or maybe not. Cube 1 doesn't even have anything on it. What is cube 1? Cube 1 has no data. Oh, it's on the mesh. Interesting. Because I'm doing tri-mesh. Okay, cool. Yeah. Let's insert rigid body as static. And then here, do we have... We can't do tri-mesh for mesh yet. One of the things that I'm thinking about doing, because like tri-mesh for mesh should work, right? It is one of the variants in the collider constructor, but because we can't construct like one of the more complicated collider constructors, docs.rs, avn. So if we look at collider constructor, right? Most of these can be constructed. So like cuboid can be constructed, sphere can be constructed, etc. I think one of the ones that we were having trouble with at one point, which I fixed yesterday, was tri-mesh with config because of tri-mesh flags. Interesting note for anybody who cares about the reflection stuff. This is an opaque reflection type. So we actually, as consumers of the reflection data, don't know that this is a U8 and thus can't even build anything for it unless we a priori like define a value for it. So what we end up having to do in Skeen is when we make property groups, there's these value primitives that we need to handle, right? And most of them are obvious, right? Boolean, uint, u8, int 32, etc., float string. And then there's this object type. And this is where like all of the other stuff goes, including tri-mesh flags. So tri-mesh flags is like the only thing that we get here is the value of tri-mesh flags. See if I can find it in here. I have it in one of these files, or I did. This. This is all of the data that we get. So we end up with like a kind of value. The crate name is avn, the module path, full module path as the type path, and then a short path and object. You have no idea from looking at this data. This is all the data we have. That this should be a U8. So we end up having to treat tri-mesh flags as its own primitive value, which I'm trying to think of like an answer for, if that makes sense. So, I think it's important to be able to kind of have these definitions in like other crate libs, if that makes sense. This is all Python stuff, so it becomes a little bit tougher. But I feel like you should be able to extend these types yourself for the value processing. So I might end up in this fetch. The only way that I can think of doing this is if you do for type value in registry items, then no, this is the wrong thing. Property groups. This is what I meant. So if we do it like this, right, and case value, and then all the way down here, case underscore would be like a go get other Blender add-ons and check them to see if they have like a specially named function to see if they want to handle what this should be. That would mean that you need like a different Blender add-on for like third-party crates and stuff, which kind of degrades the user experience a little bit because then you have to manage two add-ons. But it's also the only way that I can think of for how do you support like multiple versions of addon if they're conflicting. Because if we build that stuff into the core Python add-on, like we have here, right? This has no idea what version of addon you're using. Like it just, there's no information here that can tell you what version of addon is installed. So if try-mesh flags ever changes, we have to modify it and we have to like declare support for a particular addon version in that release. That feels really bad. That will happen for like Blender stuff too, or Bevy stuff too, like core Bevy stuff. But having like a major version of Bevy, I don't know. This is going to happen in general, and I don't know exactly what the best solution is. Is there something available in the Blender plugin format or header itself? For what? The issue is that this data is coming from Bevy. So this try-mesh flags data, the stuff we just looked at, actually. If I can get back to that file. This is what we know about try-mesh flags. This is everything we know about try-mesh flags. Like, fundamentally. When we make the BRP request, this is the data we get back. So there is no way to construct the try-mesh flags without knowing what it's supposed to be already, right? We know that this is supposed to be a U8. We know that this is supposed to be a bit flag. So if you look at try-mesh flags in the docs, like it's a U8. And if you look at the bit flags, it's like, okay, half edge is this one, component, connected components is this one. But like, God forbid any of these change. God forbid that for some reason they reorder half edge topology and connected components. And now they're different bits in the next release. Not that they're like going to do that or anything, but like that's reasonable to do in a refactor. So there are very trivial changes that will make this, that will like break the reflection, if that makes sense. I don't have a good answer for this. I think we need one, which is kind of why I'm like, okay, so I think the only way to do this long term is to have like a second Blender add-on that only provides like addon 2.1 types or addon 2.0 types or addon 3 types or whatever, you know? And then you kind of have to manage all the Blender add-ons alongside your own like crates and stuff. But it also makes it so that like there's Avian and Rapier today. If somebody else wanted to build a physics plugin, it would allow them to support like being added in Blender, you know? I feel like special casing Avian is a reasonable it's like a reasonable approach in the short term, but it blocks out other potential open source physics libraries, right? Like if we have official support in Skeen for Avian only, then we are kind of like actively contributing to the non-usability of other physics plugins or alternative physics plugins, right? So there needs to be some way to extend this. And we need to use that to support Avian. Could you build in some defaults for the current versions of Avian and then have overrides via other plugins? I mean, the current version of Avian is just going to be like 2.1, right? 0.2.1. That will not always be the case. And the Blender plugin doesn't really care otherwise about the Avian version. Right? Like the Blender plugin itself, or the Blender add-on, just so we're all on the same page, like goes and gets that data that we were just looking at and turns it into a bunch of property groups and stuff like that. So the things that, see if I can find a registry file here. I think I pulled one out a second ago, didn't I? Where did I put it is the real question. Here's a registry file. So here's a registry file. We have a bunch of different kinds of values. So duration, time, is a value. That means that if we ever want to construct core time duration, we have to define that in the same way that we're doing for TriMesh. Things like F32, F64, obviously primitive values, but also things like pec graph, node indices, right? This isn't a component that you would ever add, I don't think. Like, I don't really see a point to adding a pec graph, digraph, animation graph node. Like, you wouldn't build a full digraph. I guess you could theoretically, but if you wanted to, but that is like kind of an add-on thing, right? That's something that we don't need to support specifically. Node indices are also like the same kind of thing, like a U8. I don't think this one is labeled as opaque either. Small stir is something that we're going to have to explicitly support. So there's like other third-party crates that provide primitives that are values. I think small stir is something worth including because it's just going to be a string, you know? Path buff, another value. We have to decide how to deal with path buffers or paths in general. What happens if you select the path in the Blender plugin on Windows and somebody on Mac OS opens it, you know, like that kind of thing. That seems reasonable though, like dealing with paths seems reasonable. In core, cow stir, also in core. Asset path and render asset usages are also values. I think render asset usages is another bit field. And that's in core. Yeah, it's another bit flags. So this, anybody that uses a bit flag for stuff, that's going to be a U8 with a bunch of potential values. And we don't get any reflection information here. So maybe the answer for some of this stuff is introduce a way to define the bit flags in the reflection data. Because I don't see how else we would ever get to do this. But just kind of like to point out that entity is also a value, also a primitive value, which is something that we probably need to support in core. Image is a value, Bevy image. Instant, we're not going to support handles. Camera texture usages, sounds like a bit flag to me. Exposure is a value for some reason. Why is exposure a value? Exposure is an F32, but for some reason also a value. Is this opaque for some reason? Why is this opaque? I don't know. But there's a lot of like little decisions around like, why is this opaque? Should this be opaque? Should it be possible to construct this value? Non-zero U32 also in there. Ranges also a value. So like there's a lot of values, right? There's a lot of primitives. There's not too many of them. I don't think, is avian in here? Avian's not in this one. Avian would be in scripting here. Scheme registry. Let's copy this out. Paste, format. Come on. Language mode. JSON. Format. 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 Save? I don't know. What's going on here? Is it too long now? Okay, well, that's unfortunate. So there's 110 kinds of values here. Unfortunately, for some reason, this doesn't like to... Which file is this in? This is in Scheme. Yeah, that's just a fight. That's a massive line. Okay, anyway. There's a lot of data there. And VS Code doesn't like to deal with it. Okay, so could you build in some defaults for current version of Bevy? And we answered that. Other plugins wouldn't need the special treatment because they don't use the opaque U8. Some other plugins wouldn't. Some would. Right? Like I think we need a bit field reflect. Right? I think we need these bit values are reflected data, and we can use that to construct what this should be in terms of UI. But also you can like make private anything or make opaque anything. So it's a little weird. I don't know. I don't really have a good answer for it. Right now I'm building in AVN support directly, like we talked about before. Right? Like tri-mesh flags is just going to get here because I'm not really... One of the things that I'm not really dealing with yet is upgrading versions. But that is going to be like a big problem as soon as anybody does a major rev, you know? Luckily, I think that most major revisions happen like during the cycles. But a common pattern is Avian will do like a point upgrade to the next Bevy version, right? And they'll release a really easy upgrade for the next Bevy version. And then they'll do the hard breaking change after that. So I don't know. There's open questions here in terms of what infrastructure needs to be there to support upgrades between Bevy versions, upgrades between certain crates, and when, like, this is going to happen at some point, and what happens to your game when it does is kind of the implication here, right? If we build tri-mesh flags into Bevy or into Skeen in the Blender add-on, then any Bevy application, which is all versions, has to use the same tri-mesh flags field, which is weird, right? That doesn't match. And because that doesn't match, it will be a problem for somebody at some point. Anyway, what was I doing? More modeling or more componenting, right? That said, that I mean, that being said, that's why I'm thinking about this so much. So interesting note. Are these copies of each other? Are these linked copies? Let's get out of edit mode. So cube 1, we only put this on there. Cube 3. Yeah, cube 3 is different. Okay. Cube 1. Mesh data. Cube. Object data. So you can put components on objects, meshes, and materials. In application, Bevy LSP over BRP into Blender Python. Nod, nod. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we really want to be able to construct all these values from the reflection data. If we can construct them all from the reflection data, then everything's fine and we can just rely on that. Once we start having these like primitive values that we can't introspect, that's when the problem happens. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's not necessarily an easy question. So I'm going to build everything out first and then consider that. So this is going to be a rigid body. This will be static. We'll get rid of this. Platform behavior. I don't think we have a component for that, do we? Platform behavior currently is platform with a default timer. So platform behavior is going to need a component hook, is what it's going to need. Might need more than a component hook. Because basically what we're doing is trying to instantiate a timer based on some offset field. So this animation offset field here can be a component that has a component hook that instantiates the timer. So there is also an interesting thing where like there are things that you can't construct in Blender, like a timer, right? You can't construct like, I don't want to say you can't construct functions because I know somebody can prove that wrong. But there are things for which constructing them in Blender doesn't really make sense and are kind of hard and not something you want to do in a production application. Is that sufficient caveats for you all? Nobody's going to go try to reflect functions out of Blender now. So there are components that you are going to build that are basically going to have component hooks that then have functionality when they get instantiated. So you can label something as being like, hey, when this is instantiated, start a timer. Or when this is instantiated, replace this material. Or like all of that kind of stuff. Which kind of makes components like an explicit API. So you will have components that are just for use in Blender. Basically like just for artist usage, if that makes sense. Which allows you to kind of like, if you wanted a tri-mesh or something, you could create a better interface for it inside of Blender, let artists use that, and then write the code to back it up yourself, which is really cool. So this is rotating platforms. This is, let's do static again. Get rid of this. Do static again. Get rid of this. Goal is goal. Get rid of this. Moving platform is interesting because we've got cube, end, and start. So this is start, end, start, and this is start, end, end, and this is move linear, rigid body. Let's do the rigid body. Static. I think we actually want those to be, like all of the moving ones to be kinematic, but and then spawn point. So we need a spawn point component. Let's do that next. I'll just start doing it in here, I guess. Where is, do we have a spawn point component actually? No, we don't. Let's do is spawn point. Is spawn point has handling for on level spawn. So is spawn point. Am I in the right file? Oh no, it found it and it was under the search bar. That's why. So is spawn point will trigger spawn player event at that entity. This might be a good example of a component hook. Right? Spawn player event. The way we're using spawn points currently is when they are added, that spawns the player. That doesn't necessarily need to be the way they work all the time. But I guess we could have spawn point and respawn point. Good morning, Anas. How's it going? What is a component? Do you have any familiarity with Bevy, Ethanol? That will affect my explanation. So what we're doing here basically is Bevy is a game engine built on entities, components, and systems. What that means is that if you have a cube in the world, you have an entity that is basically an ID with a mesh 3D, probably a material attached to it, a transform attached to it, And the mesh 3D, the mesh material, and the transform are all components. So it's just the data associated with an entity is what a component is. In Bevy and in Rust, a component is just like a struct or an enum. And what we're doing right now is taking the reflection data for those, instantiating them inside of Blender, or applying them inside of Blender, and then instantiating them back in Bevy when our application runs. So I think for spawn player event gets used somewhere, right? I guess we will keep this for the moment. I think I just want to label it and abstract the spawning of the player. I don't want the player to spawn in with the level. That feels weird. So this is going to go away. But spawn point as a component is going to get constructed. So let's go to level spawn. Let's add that here. Right, so derive, component, reflect, struct, spawn point. We want to reflect the component data. And we'll want to take spawn point and register it. And I'll do a run. Because anytime we update the schema, we have to run the application. Something looks wrong there. Create collection, platform. I feel like the camera's looking in a weird position is what this is. What could cause this? This could be caused by the player not spawning because I just disabled the player spawn logic. Because the camera is attached to the player, basically. Yeah. That's all it was. Okay, so just keeping that in mind, when we disable this, we get basically the camera just looking off into a random direction. Because we haven't spawned the player. Which is fine. We are going to refetch the registry. Would it make sense to potentially learn Bevy for augmented reality implementation as far as using it for graphics and actions within the interface of stuff, the augmented reality software? I don't know a lot about AR, is something I'll say. There is an OpenXR plugin for Bevy, but I don't know much about it. So I unfortunately don't feel particularly qualified to give you that answer. The thing that I was talking about is Bevy OpenXR. I think it's Bevy Open, yeah, Bevy OXR. So like it can be used for this kind of stuff, and I've seen a couple of demos from people doing this. I don't personally have like an Oculus Rift or anything, so I don't know much about it. But yeah. I don't know much about VR, AR in other ecosystems either. That's just not my not my domain. So spawn point 2 here, we need to do spawn point on level 2. I think that's all good. We probably want spawn point here too. Yeah. Then all of these can do things like rigid body. I think that it would make sense for these, now that we have components or like a component abstraction, it probably makes more sense for these to start moving into, whatchamacallit, like library things, reusable platforms, especially as soon as we can drive like the size of stuff. Building up a library of assets that have components associated with them feels really powerful. Okay, and library, platform rounded, already got its stuff applied. Cool, so export this for the GLB. And then I guess for spawn point, we might be able to commands trigger for now. Eventually, we're going to get rid of this whole scene instance ready thing. So maybe we just stick it at the end of this level spawn. And we don't even attach it to the spawn point. Do we have commands in here already? Yes. So at the bottom of this function, basically after everything else, I'm just going to spawn in the player in. The question then is, do we need the entity in the spawn player event anymore? We will have access to this, so maybe we grab it from the query. Right, query for spawn point. And import this. So we'll have spawn points and the entity. And then we get to kind of like I think this is okay in 0.15. Else. No, not else. Yeah, else. I guess if. We'll do if let. And then this needs to be a tuple. So I think this should work. Because scene instance ready after the level spawns in for a component that is applied in Blender should have access to that component. We should only have a single. So it works. This is now working off the Blender logic, or the Blender components added for spawning the player in. So let's see if the next level works, and it does. And yeah, cool. Fix some of my formatting here because apparently Rust format doesn't want to. Cool, so now we don't need this at all. Goal requires sensor. So if goal requires sensor, then we should go to goal and do require sensor. And then this doesn't need to be here either. It's already not running, but I think it's not running anyway. Because I think we already insert goal. Probably could look this up myself, but whereabouts is 0.16 expected to release? Is that already a date in mind? Not a date. There's going to be an RC soon, like a release candidate. Probably. Ooh. Okay, so we are missing a collider on this. I think that's because try mesh for mesh here. Is how we were doing that before. I think we can get rid of all this rigid body stuff. So this is d.collider. Let's take a look at that in whatever. Yeah, 0.16 is getting closer and closer. I expect it to have a release candidate in March. I don't know, like Bevy doesn't run on due dates, if that makes sense. Like it doesn't run on deadlines. Like when the 0.16 release candidate is ready, that's when the release candidate will start. And then we'll have a solidification period of a couple weeks, and then 0.16 will come out. But it's very soon. That process is going to start very soon. Okay, so here on mesh, we've got static rigid body and we've got collider on mesh. So this is collider, but is this GLTF mesh extras, match data, d.collider? I feel like this should have worked. Let's debug or info, I guess. Info. And then info. Oh, you know what? From bmesh extras, does this require something? I'm starting to remove stuff here all over the place now. So like that's gone. Color reveal is gone. Hold point is gone. Goal is gone. Target should be gone. All of this is optional after that. And then on level spawn, mesh extras, info, data, mesh extras. Why is that an issue? Because it doesn't have debug. There we go. What else do we have here? What did we do wrong? d.target unknown field. Yeah, cool thing about Rust. Once you delete stuff like that, it's deleted. And you can no longer use it, which is great. Right, like target just needs target, and we're doing target inside of Blender now. Start end platform behavior, that stuff all works. We're now at the like removing old cruft section of stuff. So I'm pretty happy with the plugin overall. The plugin feels good. The thing that is iffy. Okay, so we still fall through that, but the data doesn't have a rigid body, does have tri-mesh from mesh. So let's do tri-mesh from mesh, and we're matching the rigid body here. Why does that work? Oh, if rigid body. There we go. That's the issue. We aren't doing the rigid body like that anymore at all. So the only way this is going to run is if we do it like this. Because I got rid of the rigid body completely. So let's make sure we get rid of this and hope that we can identify easily these other places. This is just deleting code. Love deleting code. Deleting code is my favorite thing to do. I spent an entire day this week just deleting lines from the Python add-on, making things simpler, removing like cruft and other stuff. Right, and then we're good. So notable thing, I think, is if we get to level 2 here, and we stand here, this doesn't really do anything to the player. Oh, we are putting kinematic on it here. I wonder why that doesn't do anything. I forget. Oh, it's the angular velocity. That's why. Right. Okay. So if we put angular velocity here, it's not the kinematic. It's the kinematic plus the angular velocity. I think this is what I was stopping on last time we were working on this. Because like this now knocks you off. And then because we have a floating character controller, we have to specifically target moving platforms, and I didn't want to get into that. And I got into the Blender stuff instead. That's why. Okay, cool. What else? The colliders are something that we need to do. Like colliders need to work at some point. We are down to mesh collider, right? Collider, out of bounds behavior, original transform. Original transform is something we need to handle. I think, can that be handled in a component, I'm not sure. Right, like the out of bounds behavior component will get added. It definitely gets added after the transform does. So I think we can just access the transform on that entity. So I think we're good. So let's go to this. Out of bounds respawn. Right. And then out of bounds, because I just moved myself all over the file. We need this, which I don't, do we have the on add syntax in the attribute in 0.15? I think we do. I think the function signature changes, so I need to go look it up. All right, this is our function signature. This is component ID. This is deferred world. And this is just entity. And then I guess on add. Did I mess this up? Where's component? I think that's where the documentation is. On add equals, oh, component. There we go. Like this. Okay, so this will run whenever this gets added. So when this gets added, we need world dot, I guess entity. How do we get a specific component? I blanked on this last time I tried to write it too. Why can't I remember this? Do we not need that? We just need the helper. Okay, never mind. We don't need that. Actually. We need this. And helper is then transform helper. No. What is helper? What is helper? Where is helper? What is helper? Helper is transform helper. Bouncing around all these files. Okay, so transform helper, which is probably like what? World dot, it's not a resource. It's just a system parameter. So can we use it like this? No, get entity is not what I want. Get What is transform helper? Or what is transform helper implement is a better way to ask that question. System parameter. That's what I thought it implemented. I was hoping it implemented something else too. I don't know that we need this currently. I do think that, if I remember correctly, we do. But part of the reason we needed this was compute entity. Yeah. So if we have a deferred world, and I want to get that's how you can tell it's early for me. My brain's just hard blanking right now. Okay. I know we can get multiple params. It's on a different trait, if I remember correctly, which makes it kind of like awkward to look up. I don't know. Array, slice, hash set, query. It would be nice if we could add things to the on-add hook. I don't think we can, though. Let me just check my knowledge on this. I think this is invalid. Maybe it's not. Yeah, no, it is. Okay. Because when we add that, then on-add is wrong. Why am I blanking on this? I can't for the life of me remember the name of the function that I need. Shoot. Okay. Maybe if I go to the world docs, it'll have more. QRS system, not called system. What is it called? Why can't I remember this? Maybe I just need to query it. That feels wrong. Like I don't feel like I need to query it, but oh right, because this needs to accept mute worlds when we use it like this. Yeah, and then that's not a query state. Invalid query. Expected two generic arguments. Because it needs the query and the filter. Query on deferred world must not be query on world. That's what I'm looking at here. Okay, so I know that there's, is it like dot system param or something? Why? It's not a 0.16 API. Why can I not? Yada yada, sure, yes. Generic system params, details. Show me world access. Not a phrase that I'm usually looking for. Ugh. System state? Is it system state on deferred? Yeah, okay, there we go. That's the pattern. That's why I can't find it, because system state, transform helper, get rid of this, get rid of that, get rid of that. And then this needs to be part of that. This is what we need. We need system state, which is its own thing that accepts a world. It is not a function on world. Man, that's not my favorite. Single argument, really, I don't think it works like that. Get mute. Yeah, okay. I think we can just get. Um, unwrap. That gives us a global transform. We now have an issue with getting mutable access to the world. Cannot borrow data in dereference of deferred world as mutable. In dereference of deferred world? Deref mute is required to modify through a dereference, but is not implemented for deferred world. Cool. Did we discover this last time we tried to do this? That we can't do this in deferred world? Cannot borrow is mutable. Yes. Deref mute is not implemented. Cool. We don't actually have a world. I guess it's dereffing because we're passing a reference and it needs a world. So we can't do that without an actual world, which is really annoying. Because system state new. Where's new? New accepts world, not deferred world. Can we not do that here? Do we have to do a regular observer? We can. It's a little bit, I guess, more awkward would be the way that I would frame it. Component hooks are meant for simple things, so needing to use an observer just means that it runs after component hooks. That's not really a big deal for this use case, especially. Trigger on add out of bounds behavior, and then query or helper, I guess. Transform helper. Then we don't need the system state stuff or world access. We do need helper. That does give us the global transform. And then this is going to be trigger.entity, which gets renamed in 0.16 to trigger.target. And then what is the insert here? Global transform. Transform. Not what I'm looking for. On level spawn. Original transform. Where did I put this? Then we got mute commands, commands. And then commands dot entity trigger dot entity dot insert. And then this needs to be added as an observer, which is going to be a global observer. And this should run. And we should have recovered our respawn behavior for the cubes. I got to remember that you can't do system param in component hooks. And there we go. We've recovered our respawn behavior. Hopefully for both things. Yeah. Cube, player. Everything's working. Lovely. So I think out of bounds behavior probably can get removed here. Right, because we've defined out of bounds behavior. Out of bounds behavior. Oh, you know what I did? We only need that inserted if it's out of bounds respawn. And I just inserted it regardless. So let me, right, trigger dot event. It's trigger dot event, right? I guess the event doesn't have what I want. That's fine. I just thought it did. Oh, it's going to break because of the other thing. Okay. Anyway, very easy for us to let behavior equal, and this is going to be okay, I think. Let behavior equal out of bounds dot get. I think we're still on. Yeah, dot get works. Trigger dot entity. So get the behavior, match on behavior. Do this only if we need to respawn, because otherwise we don't need it. And then get rid of this whole thing. And this is no longer being used in this file, which is sweet. Let's get rid of these unused imports. So we are definitely not processing it at that early time. And this should just work. Respawn works. Respawn works. Respawn works. Level transition works. Cool. And then colliders. Guess we don't need that. That doesn't look like it's being used. This is the start and end. Kind of like component situation and the platform behavior. The platform behavior we do need to do something about. For GLTF material extras, this is interesting. This is the goal material, which I kind of want to port to Blender. And materials goal is instantiated somewhere else, so we should be good there. Right, this is goal material here. So in materials, do we have a root materials? We do. Let's do a couple of components here. And this will be use goal material. And I guess we also want like use Uber material. Like those sound like two things that we want. So let's register the types here. And then I think both of these are going to be component hooks. I think that's the way that I did it in my example. Let me check my example maybe. Actually look at the code that I've written that is supposed to explain how to do this and make sure it explains how to actually do this. Yeah. So, or did I mess it up? No, I didn't. Okay. Yada yada. This goes here. Delete this. So we need deferred world. And this is going to be entity and component ID, which we don't use because this is the 0.15 version of the function signature and the thing I copied was 0.16. So really we need this here as well. And this is not debug material. This is goal material. Which I think we have code for already, right? We were just looking at it. So this is going to be goal material. We need this here. And this is the code for goal material. So we're going to assume, I guess, that this will work the same. So we'll do world commands entity, and we'll do this for the material, but this material is going to be that. So we need to bring in draw section because we're currently applying draw section to everything, and I haven't changed the Uber material application yet. So that's just what we're going to deal with. Shouldn't this come from somewhere? Right here, right? Goal material. Is goal material not imported? No, there it is. What's wrong with goal material? Oh, because this isn't... let me check to make sure that this is the right thing. Materials goal. Adds a new material here for the goal material, which is interesting because I feel like we always want this to be the same. So I think what we want to do, if we want to access this in the hook and we want to use the same one overall, then on startup, we can do this. Oop, that's not what I want to do. And we can do I don't know, goal material store, because we'll only have the one. Goal material store obviously doesn't exist yet. We do need this. I feel like this is the kind of pattern that people ask for all the time. How do you replace a material that you defined in Blender? So here, add systems. Here we're just inlining a system that is setting up a resource that now has a handle to a given goal material. So the thing we can do later, when this is instantiated, is grab the store, grab 0, and we end up with a handle to the goal material. And then we don't need this. We just need to clone. And in this case, I guess these are required, right? So I mean, like, we can add this to Mesh Material 3D via required components at runtime. I don't know that I really want to. I feel like extending that is weird. It is accurate though. So we could do either way. And then Uber material probably not going to do the same thing at the moment. I just want to test this out with the other approach first. So in a component hook, we grab the resource that we instantiated and add the component here. And in our startup system, we instantiate a new handle for that material. So what that means currently is that when we're doing our level spawning, and this has goal on it, right? Then everything down to here can get commented out. And actually this whole thing can get commented out because it doesn't matter, right? We can actually just get rid of that. And added looks for anything that doesn't have the goal material added, which I feel like we could do in a different way now. So this inserts the Uber material onto everything effectively. And then this entities with standard material will still have that at this point, I think. So we need entities with standard material, but without the use debug. So this is a query for mesh material 3D standard material, and without use, what do we call it? Use goal material. Did I not make that public? Use goal material here. So now that will only apply to things that don't have the goal material. So anything that we apply the goal material to in Blender should automatically not get that applied, which means that we can now do this. Because this is everything we need to handle. What are we iterating over here? This is anything, any object. So really, if we can get this out, because it won't have the ones that we don't want, then we do this. Standard materials that get, that should be okay, right? I guess it should, is it some? I guess it's some. Guess there's no error there. I guess that should be unwrappable though, because are we really continuing there? I don't think I want to continue here. Let's do if let this, open the bracket, leave the unwrap here. And then we should have only broken the goal stuff for the moment. So the goals should not have their material. Everything else should still have the Uber material. right? So goals don't have the material, so they show up as a regular box, but still work, and everything else is working. So then we need to come in here, fetch our registry again. Could not connect because I killed the game before I did that. We need to fetch the registry with the running game because we updated some components. And then where's our goal? This is a goal. And we don't want it on the goal itself. We want it on do these both use material 4? They do. Let's make this goal material. Bevy goal material. Right? And we could use the color here. I'm going to use the color for like what we... Where's my mouse cursor? I'm going to use the color for like the same kind of thing that we would see in Bevy. And then here in material, the materials tab, we're going to do use goal material, insert. This is a marker component, so we have nothing to do with it. This says material goal on it, but we've removed that logic, so it no longer exists. Let's go to level 3 and just check to make sure that this is all the same. So because they use the same material inside of Blender, right? This is the Blender version of the Bevy goal material. We can attach components to that material so that any entity that we use that material on gets these components for free. We don't have to think about it. So what that should mean is when we export and we reinitialize, if I've written all my code correctly, then the goal should be showing up. And now any material that we apply, or any entity that we apply that material to inside of Blender has the material replaced automatically via that component hook. And yeah, very happy with that in general. Now we could do like the Uber material in Blender as well. Do I want to do that though? We're just cloning this handle over and over, right? So we could easily instantiate this earlier. Same way we did the other one. And then apply the material to everything inside of Blender. We aren't currently spawning anything via Bevy, so I think that's okay. We would have to go through everything and like apply the material, but I do think that that makes sense, because if we click on this, this has material 5, 6, 8, 8, 8, right? So what are we doing here for the Uber material? This is just taking the base and extending it. And taking the Uber material handle. So I think that getting the base material and then applying the extension is easy enough to do. I think we could do that. Let me just grab this code. Let's go to the Uber material, I guess, or the root materials. because this code is basically all the same, which makes me feel like it should be in the root and not. So this and this, right? And this is now Uber material. And the thing that we want to do, since we're just setting up stuff in here, let's pull this out into a function now because I'll be adding more to it. Set up materials on startup. And let's just put this function up top. So fn setup materials, paste, syntax, so then we also need materials Uber. We call this the Uber material because it contains basically everything. So the Uber material is this. So this should come in just fine. And then we don't need this, and we don't need that. This is code that goes into the hook. So here's Uber. Right, Uber material store, which we haven't created yet. And then we need the standard materials for this component. Because we need this handle. So the question is, can we get this handle in the component hook? And is the answer to that no? Because we can't do that query. I think we can do a query, right? We could do world.query because we aren't doing mutative stuff. So material mesh 3D. Man, I can never remember how to spell this. I wish, I kind of wish that these names were different, but I understand why they aren't. It's just that I can never remember it. Okay, so get entity should give us do I need to do assets here? I think I do, right? No, I don't need to do assets. This just needs to be a shared reference. What is the actual issue here? I still have things that I need to write. I'm like half doing this. Okay. And unit. Because we don't have a filter. Query state. Okay, let's set up the store first. The Uber material store is going to do the same thing as this. We could stick these all together, right? Like we could have like material store and have a hash map or whatever. I just don't think we'll ever need to access it like that. So Uber material store exists. And in setup materials, we'll have to do an Uber material store with an Uber material that comes from our level spawn. We do a setup here up top. That's this. Is there anything we need? Sphere data, SDFs, storage buffer, argument is what we'll need. No, yeah, buffers. We do need buffers. Yeah, buffers, and I think that's it. So let's grab buffers from here. Pull it into our system here. I guess let's put it above the giant chain of materials that are going to end up being here. Asset server. Asset server is easy. So we get our Uber material store. This is materials Uber, I guess. We need to delete this and add Uber handle. That's not a handle. Why did I name it handle? The world may never know. Okay. So all of that works. And then we need to deferred world. Query. Okay, I think I'm just going to do this instead of mucking about with query here. So world.entity this entity. We don't want position, we want this. We don't want entity mute, we want this. There's still an error there. Is that a relevant error? Did I make a syntax? Yes, I made a syntax. Okay, so we should have our mat handle here. Because if we are adding the Uber material, then it should have one, but we'll have error handling soon. So let's do else return error handling, or error printing anyway. Error can't find standard material on entity. We are supposed to insert Uber material on. Cool. And that's some not okay. I hope that got, yeah, whatever. Never mind. So we're getting the material handle. And then mat handle.clone. Extended material comes in. Uber handle comes from Uber material. And materials, we're going to have to insert. I don't think that's structural. So we do need a mutable world.getResource, mute, I think, assets, extended material, Uber material. 1, 2, 3. There's an issue with that type argument. What is the issue with the type argument? Trait bound, fine. Expected 2 generic arguments. Right, because the base can be anything, so it has to be a standard material. Which is very cool, that you can make the base material anything, so you could do like a custom base material and then let other people extend it. That's not what we need though. And this needs to exist, or we've failed. And then we have materials.add. Is one of these a mesh material 3D? That's not what I want. I want the underlying handle. Mat handle.0. Is Uber handle the same thing? No, that's a handle. Let's handle not satisfied on that. Base and extension. What do we have here? We had standard material. Oh, we got the actual. Hang on. Standard materials in this context is the actual standard material, not the handle. Okay, so maybe we don't need a handle. Maybe we need the actual. Which means here we don't need this. We need Uber material store. World.resource assets Uber material. And then that's a handle. And this is an option. And this has to be, what is this currently? That's the wrong thing. Oh, that doesn't exist. That's why. Okay, so we get the assets database for Uber materials. We get our resource that holds the handle for the one that we want. And then we get the actual one that we want from it. And then we clone that. And then we have to do the same thing for these. So it's this, but it's standard material instead. Standard materials. This gives us a handle. Standard material is there. Mat handle, apparently not what I wanted. Mat handle.0 is what I want. Standard here. And then we're left with the mutable borrow, even though we need to clone these anyway. So standard will get cloned and Uber will get cloned, right? Then we actually don't need to clone these because they're already clones. And then we have Uber Material Store. And this is a handle, so we can clone it and get rid of that problem. The issue here is World Resource Uber Material Store. And we run this, and nothing should have the Uber material as far as I can think, if we've written this code correctly, which I don't know that we've added the observer yet. Setup materials could not access system parameter resmute assets Uber material. Really? Right, because that's not, is that not it? So here when we make the extended material, this needs to be both of the structs, right? Not the handles. So realistically, I think we're constructing this Uber struct over and over anyway. So that's not the right. So having right? Uber material store is the one that's the issues. Res mute assets Uber material. That's interesting, right? Where is this happening? Materials, setup materials. So in the setup, we can't have it. Interesting. So setup is running on startup. And the plugin, I guess, doesn't register it on its own. So really this would be... Okay, I think I know what to do here. We don't actually have that resource because we don't ever use Uber material by itself. So we never have like assets material, Uber material. We only ever have extended material with both of them, which makes sense because we can't use it unless it's extending the other one. Or rather, it's not intended to be used unless it's extending the other one. So the question here is, what do we want to do in setup materials? And I think we don't want to do this. So Uber material store then would store the whole thing. So it's not this, it's that. And it's not handle in the resource, it's the material. And we just kind of keep cloning this, which should clone like the buffers and stuff too, the handle to the buffers anyway, which is what we want. Which means that when we go down here to do this, we don't need assets Uber material because the Uber material store already has what we want. So we have the material there. And that works. So getting rid of that access, which was correct, I think, should allow us to have this work. We'll see. Okay, cool. So now we're seeing everything without the material applied, right? Nothing in any of these levels has the Uber material applied. This is everything without it on, basically. So we already have that here, and we know that use Uber material, right? Insert is now on this material. This is material 5, I guess. I do think that because we're only defining the colors here, right? Like I'm going to name this like Uber Sky Blue or whatever. Because if we change the base color, we don't necessarily want it to change the base color everywhere if we want to have different base colors. So like this one is material 6. And material 6 can also get the component. But like we'll name these different things, and this will be like I don't know, I'm just picking random names. So if we check these other ones, these all have it already. And then if we go back to level 2, this one is using material 3. This will be Uber Blue. Insert. And this will be Uber other blue. I'm going to need some better names for these. And maybe I'll put the color inside of the component instead. Okay, so everything now when we export should get the Uber material applied. And if it doesn't, then I did something wrong. See, these are getting it applied, but those aren't. So the question there is, what did I do wrong? Lapis, like Minecraft. This is like a deep blue though, right? Uber blue. It's got use Uber material on it. This one does too. Level 3. This has it on it and has sky blue. This one works and has it. This one didn't work and has it. Feels weird. Feels weird that it works on some of them and not others. See, level, children, entity, children. Cube 3. I didn't name these very well, did I? Cube 1, children, cube. Mesh material, extended material. And then cube 3, children, cube, mesh material 3D. Blue, steel, like Zoolander. Are you just naming colors now? What is wrong here? Right, that's the blue one right there. It's still getting the outline section, the draw section. Why is it getting draw section? Is that because I'm applying draw section? I remove it from there. Where else are we doing draw section? Am I overwriting something somewhere? Let's see, section texture, materials, examples Uber, level spawn. Draw section is no longer used. The shader swap removed the old mesh material 3D and inserted a new mesh material 3D. And we are doing a remove of a mesh material 3D standard material and an insert of the new one. Let's do I feel like this is just one of those mistakes that I made, like I was moving too fast on stream and I forgot to move a character or something, you know? Yeah, so it triggers on these two and it didn't trigger on the other ones. Let me look at assets. Let's delete expanded and import from GLB. Assets, MISC1, expanded, save. Look at this, and let's say, okay, we have use Uber material. Right? See if there's anything 19.9. It looks like it only got exported twice. Are there names for these? Bevy goal material. Sky blue got it. Pink got it. Sea green did not. Sea green does not get it in the export. Is there something going wrong in the export maybe? Let's look for where's sea green. Which one of these had sea green on it? Uber sea green, right? Use Uber material. Let's remove it and reinsert it. Save. Let's export GLTF. This is all primitives stuff. Cube 2. This was cube 7, right? 26, 22, 33. I'm just looking through the warnings. Not a lot of information from Scheme. A lot of empty objects that I'm seeing here. Actually, now that I think about it, active vertex color will not be exported. Two, three, four. Where's 7? $17. Rigs. Rigs are a different scene. Where's 7? Rig 7, rig 7, rig 7, rig 7. No cube 7? Let's do this. Let's do check the scheme data on all objects. This is a nice little debug view that I built. That is unfortunately completely populated by rigging information. Okay, spawn point 2, spawn point 1. Legs, hold point, ground. cube 7, one component static. I'm not logging for the materials, am I? So that's not going to help because I only went through all the material or all the objects and not the materials. Weird that it's working for one and not another is one thing I'll say. I would expect it to all work or all fail. There's got to be something different about those. It's possible, like these, the ones I'm standing on, are definitely like individual ones that I created. The ones that are platforms over here are definitely duplicates. It is very consistent, so I feel like there's just one piece of like data laying around, you know? Because if we do like this, right? Skein, yada yada. This is in extras, right? So I'm just going to take this whole thing from pink. I'm going to bring it down to the green. I'm just going to drop it in here. Let's not overexpand the whole thing. And this is in expanded, right? So let's do... This is level 2. But where's our GLTF? Did I put this in? Where did I put this? There it is. So let's take this and change this to expanded GLTF. Run the game. This may load differently or whatever, but the one thing that I'm looking for is for C green to have that data on it. So I know that the issue is between invalid GLTF file, trailing comma. That's my fault. I just manually modified this. Trailing comma. One trailing comma makes an entire GLTF file invalid. It's wild. Okay, so these don't work, but these would. So we know that the issue is that for some reason, the data for the materials for some of these is not getting exported. Because when I put the data there manually, it works. And when the data is with the GLB like this. So the question is, what's different about those materials? Right? This has the component on it. I wonder... if I go to the Skein code and the debug check is this one, and this looks for all objects and prints stuff out, etc. Do you think materials is a thing? Print dot 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 dot. So if we save this, that's the other thing. The other thing I'm really interested in is because it's not exporting, I'm wondering if when we reopen this without doing anything different, what happens? That's the registry. So my question is, did I mess up the registry earlier when I was going through different files and stuff? Because I definitely went into this manually and like clicked around in it and potentially messed it up. That is definitely a possibility. Um, Love when my text editor can't format a file. Extra data and the size of it specifically makes me feel like right? If I click in here and I go fetch type registry, oh, right, because I failed, I'm not running the game. Fetch registry. Should come through. We should see a bunch of logs because I think I have debug enabled. Question is, am I fighting Blender for control of this text file because I have it open? That would be really awkward. Let's go back to modeling. Well, let's first I want to check scripting. Not sculpting, scripting. Copy this. That got bigger. I think I'm not clearing that file. I think I'm not clearing that file. And what does that mean? Let me just delete it. Run. Fetch. Because if I copy this and I bring it over here, this is 1.3 megabytes. This is 500 kilobytes. So I think that we are adding too much to that skein registry file and that I need to do a clear on that file or a delete on that file in between. Good news is that all of these have kept data through that. So really the question then is if I export and run with the right registry file. Unknown vertex attribute, color 1, color 2. That seems weird, right? Uber material. Goal. Rigid body static. This all has the data. Curious as to what is going on there. Let's have a little trumps around the GLTF file. Right, hold point, rigid bodies there, rigid body there, rigid body there, spawn point there, rigid body. Hold point, dynamic respawn, color reveal red. All of this looks good in that sense. Use Uber 19. See, it's used in more places now. Pink, green has it. So there was something off about the Skeen registry there, for sure. So you use Uber materials here. It's all good. So something was wrong with the export, maybe? What kind of things do I have enabled here? Custom properties, Skeen, GLB. Should be everything. Did we enable anything weird here? No. Is it possible the exporter is missing stuff? Maybe? All of these are right now, though. So that was the issue, for sure. Right, like the materials on everything. What time is it, actually? 11:30, perfect. I was just starting to get hungry and went, what time is it? I wonder if it's lunchtime. I think that is all it was. I think I need to fix my handling of the Skeen registry file. Because if I export again, because it uses that registry data to know what to export. So if that registry data is messed up for some reason, then when it does a GLTF export, it doesn't quite know what to do. But otherwise, everything else is working pretty well. So let's, I guess, review what we did. Because basically everything except for colliders is handled via Blender now, right? I guess material, let's get rid of anything here that we don't need. I think it's just material at this point. So this is no longer necessary because we just define it in Blender. Platform behavior, we haven't changed yet, haven't gotten to that. This is going to be interesting because it's like cube with a start and an end. And we can definitely like put empties into the world now or something like that and then drive values in the component. Thanks for streaming these things. You did end up learning a thing or three by osmosis. Cool. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them out too. That's kind of what the stream is for, you know? If you see something or if you have a question about something else. So cuboids here. Colliders. I think colliders are really the only things we have left. Let's get rid of all of these extra, like, unused things. Also, the other thing I wanted to do through this is increase or put out some stuff that would increase people's general understanding of like Blender and how to interact with it via Bevy. Even if we ended up not getting to the point where this add-on was useful, which I think we got actually to a pretty useful point. Just having some more videos and data showing what it looks like to work with Blender. I'm going to do like not like a wrap-up video, but like a recap video on the Blender add-on at some point. And then maybe I'll go into like the implementation details and stuff. And once that's on the internet, more people will actually be able to work inside of Blender with the data and stuff. Because it's like, if you're going to do Bevy and you're going to do Blender, then you also have to know Blender custom properties. You have to know GLTF extras. You have to know how to deal with components in Bevy. You have to understand like observers and hooks to deal with that data once it comes in. You have to understand serialization and reflection if you're trying to use any of that. And it's like, it just ends up being a lot. There's more after that too. So it was a long time. I kind of like dove into this for a month. But I do think that the streams and stuff were useful for other people. And also like just having a simplified implementation of reflection for this plugin, even if somebody just takes this code and does something else with it, would be useful. But I am actually going to release this. This is now running in 0.15, right? So what I did with the add-on, which I guess we didn't really talk about. Let's see, Rust, Adventure, Scheme. So what I did with the add-on is there's now 2 branches and a template. There's a Bevy 15 branch, which is the published version on crates.io right now. There's a main branch. The main branch is 0.16. So that's where we built the functionality originally. And I backported it to 0.15. Interesting note about the backport is I basically took some of the 0.16 code for the BRP endpoint and just straight copied it. This is a backported version of the endpoint for the registry reflection that's going to be in 0.16. So the 15.16, like I'm using it in 0.15 and I want to upgrade to 16 should be really easy. There's now a template where if you use the Bevy CLI, you can do this. If you use Cargo Generate, you can do that. And you get like a fresh minimal project. There's like I'm starting to build documentation in here and stuff. I think technically it is on docs.rs, but obviously there's no documentation here. Like man, it's tough to like put documentation in a crate that doesn't have, like, you don't use any of this, you know? Like there's nothing in the crate other than the plugin that you're supposed to actually use. So it feels really weird to put documentation here that doesn't just say, go read the book. Because like ostensibly there is nothing, right? This is a zero surface plugin on the Rust side. if you're going to include it in like a game, right? Like we did, right? Like you import the plugin and you set it to default, and that's it. You don't need to do anything else. And then like the Blender add-on probably has a little bit more documentation to it. But this stream, we were able to really reduce this little like weird serialization thing, which I really enjoy. And then, let's see, what are we handling in Blender now? We're handling rigid bodies. We have spawn point components applied to the spawn points. We have goals attached to the goals, as well as components attached to different materials. So like the goal material that we use in Blender can be used to any goal, and that just carries the component with it. I would like to look a little bit more at drivers. I think driver support for instances is something that'll need to be documented. The big thing missing here is collider constructor support for avian, which is something that everybody will immediately want. And other than that, I think we're pretty good, honestly. Like this is feeling very usable. This is feeling very like it works. Oh, right. There was that one bug that I need to fix. Where's the Skeen repo? My brain works in like physical memory spaces. So I have a bajillion desktops. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on stream. And then I have another like 15 on the left over there. But like if I'm looking at the layout on the desktop, my brain remembers. Let's see, to do default implementations would be cool. Subtypes for different kinds of colors. Oh, color is something I need to check actually. Development, and then clear Skeen registry.json when fetching new Bevy reflection data. This is the issue that we ran into earlier. Basically, if you have multiple objects in one file at the top level, then only one of those is going to parse. And I don't know that it's deterministic which one of those values gets used. So just need to make sure that we clear that Blender file out correctly when we're reinserting stuff. Blender add-ons, Blender, Bevy, Rust have been separate Venn circles for a while. The series has been a wonderful resource thus far. Sweet. I'm glad you're finding it useful and potentially enjoying it. I think that's it for today, though. We've got, for really adventurous people, you could probably just go grab the code and install the add-on yourself if you've been watching streams. I don't have any instructions for how to do that yet or anything. So that's why I say it's for really adventurous people. I'll try to get a like a zip file that people can install in Blender done sometime this weekend. And then I'll probably drop a note maybe in the Bevy show or Bevy crate release channel or something about it. I feel like I should make the video before I do that. I don't know. We'll see. But if you're interested in knowing when that happens, either follow the repo or join Discord. Discord being, I think, this link. I'll put out a note. Well, yeah, there we go. I'll put out a note when I make it available actually here first, before I post about it publicly or make a video or anything. But that's it for today. Thanks everyone for hanging out, and I will see you probably Monday for the next stream.